Welcome, everybody, to Sovereign Thoughts, Episode 2. I started these as a way to build in public, talk about kind of things that we're thinking about. For those of you who saw Episode 1, you kind of know, talk about the things that I'm thinking through as we're continuing to build out the systems. Um, Part of this is will be available as a summary on the sovereign.ai website when it's ready. And that'll be immediately after this episode ends. I'm planning to bring in a co-host, but he is a little delayed today, so we will probably see him join just a bit late. Right now, part of the beauty of doing these live unscripted sessions and an interesting part is I can be reactive to some of the more recent news that's out there. And one of them that caught my eye was an interesting post on X a couple days ago now by Satya Nadella, which is the CEO of Microsoft, if you don't know. No, so I'm going to shift the conversation just a bit at the start here and talk about what he posted and why I think it's kind of relevant to what I'm doing. And then also hopefully share with you some things that I find really interesting with what he said as well. So then we'll loop back to the original topic that I did post about. So part of one of the things that he posted was his framing of splitting a company's value into the human capital, which is its people supply, and the token capital of AI, and then owning that token capital instead of renting it. Because right now, as you know, a lot of us rented from the major providers, whether it's Anthropic or it's OpenAI. And one of the core insights that I think that he had was companies that build proprietary learning loops early have an advantage that's going to be hard to replicate. And his test of control is to remove a model and drop in a different one. So if you're using Anthropic, um, drop in OpenAI or one of the other ones that are out there, and your company veteran, your existing knowledge, know-how stays put. It's living in the system. I think one of our frustrations, and especially my frustration, is when I started OpenClaw uh, 3 months ago now, is I always had to remind it just seemed to lose its context around who am I, what am I trying to do, every day that it was a fresh start. And I found that very frustrating. And same thing with Cloud and OpenAI. When I'm using the application, chatting with it, if I open a new chat window, it's like it doesn't know what happened in the prior one. I mean, how many of you guys have had that? It's frustrating because here I've been telling it things and I want it to carry forward into the next one because maybe I'm expanding on the same concept but in a different way, or I'm asking a different question that's related. And it'll tell me, I don't know who you are, and it'll start over. So, what he described on this organizational knowledge is really interesting because that's what we've been building. It's one of the first pieces that, as I started, I started with Atlas, and Atlas is really the collector. And then I built Cognos, which is kind of the memory system. And then the last one, which we're going to talk a little bit about in the end here, is Orion, which is the action. So I'd like to show you kind of what I mean by Cognos and what we put together, and then talk about kind of how I see that fitting into what he's talking about. So this over here, as you see now, this is what we call Cognos. Now, this is Neural Nomad's brain, so I like to refer to each one of these as a brain. But you can see that there's information, and as we've added information to Cognos, it starts to group around particular topics. And you can see, I call these neurons kind of the interlinkings between things that we've been talking about and discussing. And then there's also areas where, there was an interesting concept, so we've added it. Like here was a pre-deployment discussion. So we've added that as well. And the way we use Cognos is we, for Neural Nomad, is we will update or upload information to it that we find interesting, and collect it for future reference. The other thing we have is one for sovereign as well. And then I have what I call a personal brain. So I've got three different brains kind of operating, each with very different purposes. You know, neural nomad is for the consulting side of the house, the professional services. Sovereign is our development arm, and personal is just for me to collect information that I find. As I'm listening to a podcast, they make a good point. I don't want to lose it, so I'll load it into my personal brain. And the last thing I'm kind of doing on top of that is I'm building what I call a meta brain, because of course, three segments of brains doesn't really help me if I'm trying to look for linkages across them. So the meta brain, the purpose of that is to really bring all of these different brains that I'm going to call them brains for lack of a better term, together so that I can ask it questions, or my agents can use it as I'm asking them questions or asking them to do particular things. So if I jump over here and just scroll back a little bit, you can kind of see in Cogniz Neural Nomad, I have capture, which I talked about, right? I can drop things in here. It'll automatically be loaded. I could chat with it. I can ask it, based upon something that I have, what did we talk about for the next feature in Sovereign, or who is the next project that we're working on? So in there, I can ask it chat questions, and it'll bring back, based upon the knowledge that it has, that information. I can also just search generally. Tell me everything you know about, let's call it Sovereign, right? This is not some in the neural nomad brain. What do you know about Sovereign? And you can see if I make a decision, like here, I deprecated a particular function. So it's loaded in here as my decisions, and you can follow the decisions along. Anything that's loaded gets assigned, and I can look at the most recent things that somebody had added to it. Proposals is kind of interesting. Right now, I don't have any. What proposals will do is, as I hook up my OpenAI or my OpenClaw agents to it, it'll use this knowledge, this information that I have, for context in its questioning and in its answers, right? And part of the proposals is if it finds contradictions or updates or wants to add something to it. So maybe it made a decision, or we made a decision together when I was communicating with OpenClaw, it can propose adding that to the memory. So that's where all of the agent proposals would show up. Every day I can run a reflection. I can see daily reflections or weekly reflections. And basically they say, what am I working on? What do I need to pay attention to? What wins did we have today? Anything that got archived, as I mentioned, we are not using the AIM concept anymore. So that got archived. It's no longer going to be relevant to its memory, but I can look at anything that was archived. And if some reason we decided, no, I really want to bring that back, I want it to be part of memory again, I can unarchive it, and it'll be found again within the memory. And the last one here you'll see is institutional. Institutional is interesting in that right now there's 19 strategy, 13 ideas, 8 contexts, 3 decisions, 6 research. The way institution works is, as I mentioned, we built Atlas to capture. So if you're using Atlas in your system, or in your organization, it has a capture mechanism. And I'll maybe go into that in another episode. But within capture, once the information has been collected, it will send it to memory. So you'll have kind of this live institutional feed right into memory. And then you tie memory into your agents, or your employees can use it as the knowledge base. So you can put anything you want in here and it'll group it together. So over time, you'll see like there's clusters, right? And I would expect to see a cluster. I'm not exactly sure what this one is, maybe some strategy that we're working on. But you'll see clusters maybe in an organization around member services. There might be a loan originations cluster. There will be interlinkages maybe between them for strategy, or budgeting, or any of the other kind of areas where they tie together, IT support, IT management, application development. So I see a lot of clusters that will be forming with connections, and you can drill into each one of them. Like, let's say that there's a particular node out here that's way off to the side. Let's use this one. What is this one? Centralized offer management, way off to the side. That's because we don't really have centralized offer management anymore. Probably could deprecate that, but this one here, if this was important to me, I know that I have not added enough information to Cognos to have a good representation to use in my other systems of centralized offer management. So I would look at trying to try to augment that particular area. So what this does is it gives me a really good visualization of kind of what's happening in the organization. Where am I light on data? Where do I have a lot of data? And kind of what are the linkages between them? So this goes back to what Sadia said about organizational memory. That's going to be the key, so that every time that you want something, an agent to run, an employee, you're working off that same knowledge base. If you switch models, you're not losing what you had in the model um, in the future, right? You actually have this all sitting in a centralized, what I'll call, brain. So I kind of talked a little bit about token capital, rent versus buy, the meta brain, you know, so to kind of close this out, memory is great, but one of the things is action. With memory, without action. Sorry, let me try this again. Memory without action is just the library, right? You got to tie in your agents. You have to tie in your employees to it, to use it, to augment it, to add to it. But there's also one other thing that you can get out of it, which is action. And the last time I talked on episode 1, I talked about kind of next best action and what we were struggling with there. And I wanted to show you what we had been working on after that discussion, which we call Orion. So if you look at Orion, this is basically now what we're building for, we'll call it member twin or twin health. So what it does is it takes in information all anonymized from your organization, from your credit union, could be from any organization, and it builds basically twins of your customers, of your members, of your employees, whatever you like your twin to be of. And then we have actions, right? So this is where last time I struggled with what really constitutes actions. And this is where it's going to be personalized to every different organization. And you can see in here, there's some retention actions, there's some offer actions, there's a financial wellness program. Here in education, there's a college planning resources. So what this does is if you go into feature map is empty. This has all been, this is all basically synthetic data right now that I'm showing you. So when we actually tie this into an organization, there's a small little Docker program that runs that sends all anonymized data into Orion, and it builds these digital, let's call them digital twins, for lack of a better term. But I can show you a little bit about here. If I plug in this mortgage one, and this, like I said, is just it can be named anything. It could be member 1234, or whatever your member number is, or however you want to anonymize it. I just called them mortgage so I can remember which twin this was, and I want to inspect it. You can see that right now I have an understanding score of 96. All of the information that it's using is coming from known information. So as I mentioned, I use synthetic data. And it's telling me that for this particular member, I should offer a home loan and probably a savings program. And you're saying, well, Darren, I thought that you weren't just going to do offers. And I'll show you a couple other ones where it's not doing offers. It's actually providing a couple different things. And it's saying that my offer should be a mortgage in the channel email. And in particular, in savings program, it should be a financial wellness savings goal in channel email. So couple different things here. I guess when I said it's 2 offers, it's not. It's actually an offer and a financial wellness program that's being offered to this, and it's ranking them about which one should you use first and which one should you use second. And a lot of that's based upon that priority I just showed you in setting up the features or those action maps that we went through. You can tell you a little bit about facts. It gives some different weightings based upon the information that it received. It tells me when the last time that I got a snapshot from the institution was, and also what the recommendations are. And it gives me a little trace log of it. Basically, when it read this, it decided that these were the couple things that were most important to it. So that's what a twin looks like. I'll show you another one. This one here is simply measuring. Let's see here, copy. This one is looking at a member that was stressed out, financially stressed. And you can see that for this particular member, there's some indications that we might want to do outreach. And there's also maybe a financial health check that we could offer to that member. So trying to meet the member where they are. Facts, this decision to fatigue score basically says that, this one it's a high value, it's close to 1. So therefore, we probably offered them a number of things over the recent period. And so they're probably going to be less receptive if we continue to offer them additional products or services that we have. But you can see down below that they do have a declining deposit balance. It's been trending down for the last 90 days. So therefore, you can see that there probably is something that would indicate that maybe we should do a financial health check or provide them some kind of member outreach. Same thing if you had attrition scores, right? And maybe you want to do member outreach if something is indicating that that member is likely to attrit. So not after the action, after they've already made that decision, like we talked about last time, but making it and reaching out proactively before it gets to the point where they're ready to leave. Right. This goes back to when I talked about it in episode 1 about if I walk into a restaurant and they know me, right? They have my coffee ready, they have my bagel ready to go. They know who I am. I feel a lot better. And it's at such a deep level. I don't know necessarily why I like them other than, maybe they're friendly but I feel like they know me. And that's what this is intended to do. It's really intended to know the member at a level that, as I talk about personalization, doesn't get to today. And this is where when I built the member, I'm sorry, the housing program. Sorry, I'm going to copy one more here and just show you it. When I built that house program a long time ago, this is what I was trying to get to. At the time, I was doing a lot of clustering, which is very similar to what we're doing today, right? Is we're trying to cluster members together that look similar, maybe similar age, similar balances, similar scores that we developed internally. We cluster them together and we make the same offers. In this particular case, I'm really looking at member by member. So if you were to look at this and say, if you had 1,000 members, you would have 1,000 different actions in here, one for each or two for each member that we have or that you have. So the next thing is, I'll just show you one last one, which is this is a college one. As some of you know, I came out of college planning and college lending. So in this particular case, this is a college one. We probably need to look at maybe offering them a college goal program within the financial wellness, and then kind of college planning resources. So if you have college planning resources, this is the way we should be sending them. And it's an education material around college planning. So we know that they're probably ready to go to college or thinking about it in the next year or two. We want to get them into our college planning programs if we have them, or getting them aware of any college resources that we could provide. Maybe it's just lending. Well, we would show that in here. Let them know early that after federal loans are exhausted, it's time to take a look at the credit unions. And what this does is that also tells me that this member prefers the channel being SMS. I don't know if you can see that, but in this particular case, probably a younger Gen Z, they don't want email. They don't want, letters sent. They want SMS. And the same thing last time when we were talking, I said about my aunt, right? If you guys remember, the last one I used was my aunt is in her 80s and she wants to get her paper statements. Well, in this particular case, it would say, this person requires or is most interested in receiving information from us through paper. And that's the channel that it would show. And the same thing, we build the facts, the timeline, the traces, and everything that we get is anonymized. As I mentioned a couple times, I think that's really important. You're not sending us social security numbers, you're not sending us balances, you're sending us changes in balances and fairly light implementation on your side. And basically, once you hook up that Docker, you load the information into it. It can pull it out of your core or some of your other systems, and you can send it all to us, and we will go through it and create these profiles, these member twins. And then what you would do, the way you would use this is there's a couple ways. Number one is you could use it within your member services area, right? If somebody calls in, you can see, oh, these are the things that this member may be interested in. You can start talking about it. The other thing is if you're using agents to generate emails or generate SMS messages or letters, even, you can hit this and say, tell me what offers or what activities, what next best actions for this member, and what channel do they prefer to receive them in? And you'll get back a response. Send them this through this channel at this time. And the other thing is that, and this really goes back to the actions, is this is why this actions is so critical. And you can deactivate them. So in this particular case, there was an auto loan offer. Up to $75,000 was the product. You can add additional information in here about what will qualify for that. If we take in a FICO band and you want to offer it to somebody that's over 700, we can add that as a criteria in here. And then in retention outreach, you can see that this is a high priority. It's a 10. So if we come back to somebody that says, oh, if we have an indication that somebody is likely to attrit, we probably need to act on that. So retention outreach is one of them, and it's a high priority because we don't want to lose that member. So that's why that's a high priority. And then we have some kind of loan offers in here, debt consolidation loan, and you can see each one of these is different. So, and you can have hundreds of these, and they will all be prioritized according to that one member. They're at the individual level, which I think is so important. We're not clustering them saying this group of 500 members, this group of 100 members should get this offer or get this next best action. You can say this individual, which is such a change than we've had in the past, is saying this individual should get this from us at this time. And I think that's where, really the power of knowing who our members are is. So I really appreciate kind of your visiting today and listening to me talk. Like I said, I will be putting a summary up on the sovereign.ai website. I encourage you to go out there and look for Satya's X post and kind of go through that and see what he's saying about owning that memory, owning that intelligence, and being able to switch out models. He's actually going as far as saying we should have some open models because the quality of the open models is so good now, and they're just behind Frontier, but also having Frontier models available. So I think that's a post that's very interesting to read and think about, and then kind of talk about what even internally, what do you think learning loops? How do you see them evolving within your organization? I think that, as I mentioned before, 12 to 18 months is where that separation is really going to occur as people build out that memory. You can see I've only had that Neural Nomad one. I'll click over here. I've had this Neural Nomad running for about 2 weeks, and we've been dropping things in here. We have 55 nodes and 52 connections. So as this grows, it'll become even more valuable to not only us, but the organizations that run them. And then kind of lastly, is take a look inside your organization about how you are knowing your member. How do you really know what they are looking for at a particular time? And I'd love to, give you a demo if you'd like to see it a little more closely about what next best action can do. What are the capabilities of it? How do you collect that information? If you need a security review of that, perfectly fine. Like I said, we don't collect any PII, just like we don't through any of our platforms. Everything is anonymized, and it's all multi-tenant, right? So you're all separated. A good use if you think about memory too is, acquisitions. if you have two organizations and you bring them under MetaBrain, you can compare how are my processes different between these. PE is another way. They've got three or four companies maybe that are in the same area. They're all manufacturing. You can bring them together and look at how do we process differently, which one is more effective. So a lot of different options for both memory, the MetaBrain that we're working on right now, and then also Orion. So I hope you found it valuable, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions. You can always email me, Darren.Dickinson at either neuralnomad.ai or Darren.Dickinson at sovereign.ai. So I appreciate your time today and thank you.